Yeah.
It's making you look crazy.
Look crazy. Chris just texted me to send him the code, so give me a second.
Okay.
Hopefully I got that all right. Guess we'll do an audio check.
Check.
Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:31. First order is to approve the minutes of the July 14th and July 17th regular and special meetings. I'll entertain a motion. And if you guys can bear with me, I'm doing minutes too.
Oh. Okay.
So I just need a motion for those two sets of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the 14th and 17th, you said? Minutes?
Yep.
You guys read?
I'll second
Chris,
that.
did you second?
They did.
Any questions or review or anything?
No.
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Super. Thanks. Next is the storm recap. So I'm going to give a brief recap. Give me a second. I'm going to try to do a screen share here. Or somewhere. I have too many windows open. That's my problem. So, and this will get rolled up into the minutes. Just giving a quick recap of what happened. We had a little tropical storm roll through. We knew it was going to be a wind event mostly. Came blowing in, blew out by 9, left in its wake an entanglement of trees and wires, affecting approximately 80% of our roads, and caused over 90% of residents and businesses to lose power. So this is just going to be a quick bulleted recap of sort of tasks, observations. The real task that's ahead is for emergency management to go through the process of reaching out. So they'll reach out to all stakeholders for their detailed notes and observations, which will be developed using AAR National Standard Framework and will be presented to the Board of Selectmen probably at the next meeting. The purpose of the AAR is it goes into a deeper review of town-wide response to a disaster. So they're in the national framework for disasters and how to mitigate hazards and protect and respond to disasters. There's a basic framework of capabilities, stuff that you prepare for, stuff that you do, stuff that you learn, and then you go through a disaster or you plan an exercise and you see how that compares to your plans. And so it's a continuous cycle. And this AAR gives us somewhere to go as far as improvement, creating and building on the resiliency and preparedness for the next storm or disaster. So just a brief summary. Ahead of the storm, we had I believe it was a full week before, we had a call with the governor. We had a call with emergency management for the region, with all of the town CEOs, all of the town EMDs to talk about what they thought was coming. So on Tuesday morning, I believe it was around 8:30, David made the call up to Demis to open the Emergency Operations Center, and that is to was supposed to help us get Eversource Make Safe crews here. So that was done very early. Also ahead of the storm arrival, emergency management held a unified command meeting Tuesday morning to just review storm prep, and went through basically the sort of checklist items that Demis gives out to the towns to remind to conduct equipment checks, ensure adequate personnel, the very basics of preparing for any sort of disaster. During the storm, obviously, the fire department, EMS, our resident street trooper responded to dozens of calls. I think multiple isn't really a fair articulation. And shortly after the brunt of the storm really started to hit, Litchfield County Dispatch declared an area-wide incident due to the overload of calls into their call center, which adds to the complexity locally for us because our fire department had to man basically become our own town's dispatch center when all of those people are really needed to go to the call. So it definitely added to the complexity, and they did a great job. During recovery, which really was, started probably 9 o'clock that night, emergency management did daily conference calls each evening to recap the day's activities, troubleshoot any ongoing safety concerns, pinch points, and then prepare for the next operational period, which was 24 hours. We used the VOC, virtual EOC, and it was really beneficial to be able to pull together and track road closures and status and be able to have all team communications in that one space. So that was really, really useful. We did an Everbridge notification that I'm not sure last time one was done. Danny Soul, his staff up at LCD, Kevin Webb was amazing. It was one phone call and one email to get out notification to the town. I believe we sent out 3 altogether. And so that goes to, it's a reverse 911. So it goes to every person's phone in town. And if people have registered through CT Alert there, and I've identified text or cell phone or email, it went to all of those different pathways. So this was a good first opportunity for us to see who's registered, who's not registered. And one of the big things coming from the AAR is going to be a sort of a push to register a lot of our citizens locally, because we can do messages at the town level with Everbridge. So we'll create almost like a PR push to register people. And it's similar, it's the same thing as the CT Alert, but it's something that we can do at our local town level. And for this storm, because one of those unique things was that Spectrum was out, AT&T FirstNet had a failure, Frontier, the loss of fiber connection for the fire department, that all of those usually don't go out. Usually you at least have your landline, but in many places in town, that was the situation. So for many people, if they didn't have a landline, they may have cell service, et cetera, et cetera. So doing this multi-pathway messaging is the best way, short of driving to every home, doing paper messaging. It's a really quality way to get out messages to the public. Emergency management stood up Twitter and Facebook, and they were doing a lot of posts and a lot of tweets all, during the recovery, and continue to. Town was able to stand up the Facebook, and we put some posts up, and we're working on how we're gonna get better at that, and how we're gonna continue to communicate better with the community. We sent out a number of the townwide email mailings, just continuing to try to improve, especially in these emergency situations, the messaging that goes out. There was a point where there was so much communication down that we were starting to talk about creating paper messaging and having the CERT teams go out as sort of strike teams to deliver paper messaging, because we weren't 100% sure that we were reaching everybody. So that's definitely an after action item. Emergency management director, Eric and David were in constant communications with Eversource before the storm's arrival, and throughout with Rick to identify where Rick needed to go, where Eversource needed to go. The big failure here was on Eversource. I don't think that's news to anybody. I think it's out there in the public. We had a community liaison that did a really good job in the framework that he was given, which was not great. He was still not getting a lot of information from up his chain, so he was equally frustrated, and he lives here in town, so he's got skin in the game to get things fixed. So he was extremely frustrated, as were everybody was frustrated. CERT was activated, and that's got to go through Demis at the regional level. So we put through that paperwork pretty quickly. The charging stations were open. We opened, thanks to Kent School, we opened up their pre-engineering center, I believe it's called, and we're able to stand up a cooling center. Didn't get a ton of folks to come down, but having it available was something that we hadn't really done before. And I think that goes to more of those relationships that we're going to continue to build with Kent School and South Kent School, Marvelwood. Marvelwood offered to open up a cooling center, but the road was blocked, so that would have been an issue. But I think it was a Sunday afternoon, right, David? It was Sunday afternoon that I was talking to somebody on the phone and asking, because nobody had air conditioning, and that was the whole problem. Because there was so much outage still all over town, we couldn't find anywhere that actually had air conditioning to provide a cooling center. And somebody said, what about Kent School? I think their pre-engineering center has power. And this was right after like the meat of town came back online, and called Joe Walensky, and Bonnie went over, and it was 20 minutes, and she came back and she's like, yeah, there's this huge room and tables and chairs, everything. We have a plan for COVID, and we're good to go. So that was a big plus. We decided early on to get some commodities delivered, because we didn't know how long the power outages were going to go on beyond what had come back on Sunday in center of town. So we had a couple of pallets of MREs and a bunch of pallets of bottled water delivered. Gave a lot of those out during the course of the couple of days where we had the charging center and then the cooling center open. There was a lot of use of the cooling center. I want to say it was a few hundred people who used the charging station over the course of 3 days that it was open. So that was a nice surprise that people were coming into town. People wanted to just charge their devices, and we had a lot of good interaction with townspeople. And I think that messaging got out in that way as well. So it was good that it was here at Town Hall. It was outside. So those were sort of little pearls in the middle of all the challenges that we had. David and Eric and I, and mostly David and Eric, responded individually to probably hundreds of phone calls, emails, texts, even Facebook Messenger messages, tweets. We put up a Facebook message on the town Facebook asking if you still have no power, let us post your address. And that was able to sort of point us back in the direction of where these sort of high outage and high priority areas were. And again, so the first notification that we did to Eversource of the roads was that Tuesday night. That first list that we sent them.
The first list, yeah. There's a process. There's a form that we're supposed to actually use that the state distributes for the utilities. So we converted our internal list over to that. Late Tuesday night, once we had the final initial list at least.
So we started Tuesday night up to Eversource, letting them know what, where the priority areas were, and we weren't getting a lot back. And when would you say the first crew was in town? Was that Friday?
So, yeah, there were several one-off crews that came into town for priorities. Things like wires on fire, and even those we had to call a couple times. We had to do multiple notifications and elevate those. And they certainly didn't come in town for the first few days. So back in my notes, I would say it was Friday night. It was somewhere that would, I think, be around like the 96-hour mark was the first not priority one crew to actually come in and start trying to do some work. And at that point, they were primarily they were actually starting to do some initial restoration, which was actually not what we were asking. As much as we want to restore, and obviously that's a priority, we still had roads that were completely inaccessible, but they actually started bypassing doing that. And that was not an atypical thing across the state. It's atypical to their agreed upon
Plan.
process with the regulators, but
Right.
for this particular storm, that just seemed to be sort of their process. They were going around all that. So it'd been like, yeah, later Friday. And that was just one crew initially.
And so from pretty early on, there was a governor's call Wednesday, the day after landfall, and there were many town CEOs who were saying, where did the playbook change? Because we all got the playbook from you all after the last big storm, and this is not how this is playing out. So from really, really early on, there was something different going on with Eversource and the response from them, and just continued throughout the entire response. And, you know, it wasn't the crews and the boots on the ground. When they got their missions and when they got their instructions, they were going and doing what they always do. It was the organization and the management piece was so cumbersome. The crew chiefs had to go to Torrington to get the mission orders after they arrived in Kent. And so we ended up having these, caravans of trucks parked along the side of the road for 4 hours with nothing to do, because the supervisor had to go up and have an in-person meeting in order to get the instructions and the directions of which circuits to work on. So there was a lot there that they failed on, and I'm sure everybody's seen it in the news that there's PURA has opened the investigation into the utility companies, and there are a number of towns that have requested for intervener status, and I think that we should really consider that tonight, making a motion to direct Randy to apply for intervener status. Reading, Brookfield, Bethel, Danbury. Randy said he was talking to Pete Bass in the last couple of days. And I think it's just going to continue northward because the whole northwest corner is pretty outraged. It's important for us to have a seat at the table. We have a lot of residents who have really important stories that we need to tell, and whether that comes down the line in testimony, I think it's important for us to have a seat at the table. And that's going to be a longer term thing, but the legislature is looking to go back into session in September, and the ones that I've talked to, and I've talked to most of them, have all said this is going to come out the other end via some legislation that's going to address this. So I think it's important for us to have a voice out there for this process. So I'm going to make a motion that we instruct town council to apply for intervener status to the PURA investigation on behalf of the town.
I'll second that.
Okay. So Eric and Chris, does the way I explain it, does that seem to make sense and understandable? It's early, but I think we need to do it now and not wait, because it's going to, start to sort of move like a freight train.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to, you're going to be the one on the, discussion panel, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, and we haven't, the COG hasn't talked about it because they hiatus in August, but I was in communication with Barbara Henry and Don Stein and other first selectmen around the region, and they're all, thinking along the same lines. So it may come out in September that COG, comes together and does something as well. But I think the more towns that can get involved, the better. Anybody, Ed, Chris, do you guys have any questions? Anybody else have any questions?
Cost and what we're going to be spending and where the money's going to come from for it?
It would come from the budgeted item for our legal. I don't know if those costs would be reimbursed, coming out the other side of this through Eversource. I don't know any of that, but we can see if we can get a feel from Randy. I'm not sure. I think it's too early to know how much exactly it's going to cost. And I imagine the more towns that get involved, we'll be able to pool the legal resources. We're not all going to come at this with all of our separate attorneys. But yeah, we can definitely try to get a sense. And I think David will attest that, people want Eversource to answer to what happened and where those massive failures were. And with the CEO's, that story coming out about the CEO, and his compensation package, that was, more sort of fodder for the anger from residents and from people all over the state.
I think it'd be helpful. I think it adds to our ability to be a voice, and it kind of elevates a lot of the issues that we have or that we had and we're worried about having again. So I think from a time sensitive standpoint, they do seem to be moving pretty quickly. There's concerns obviously with more storms ruining the Atlantic, and it could just be a macro burst. But the fact was that they didn't follow even the process that exists, and when towns and even when the state tried to get them to do that, there was a complete breakdown in ability to get them to move for, realistically, if you look at the count on the days, almost a week. And some towns came up even later than us before they even saw their first crew. 100% outages the following week at the 7-day mark. So I mean, there were just problems all over. And if you look at the map, there's certainly elements, that there's some complaints about UI and some of the smaller utilities, but if you look at the map, it was a blatant Eversource failure. And I think anything that we can do to be a voice for the residents and to help elevate those voices, obviously the better. We're starting to compile all of our notes and really try to document things out to present, and I'm sure residents are doing the same thing. So
yeah, and there's been a number of residents who have reached out that I've talked with about, telling their story, because there's so many unique stories of people who had medications that they were losing, obviously people losing entire contents of the refrigerators, people who were medically dependent on equipment that failed, just a lot of important stories that need to be told and need to be passed along up to Eversource so they understand the impact of this massive failure. And every storm is going to be difficult. There's no way around that. Nothing, it's never going to have perfect response from Eversource, but just the hourly failures of even basic communications from Eversource out to the community liaison was, just all the time. It just went on and on and on and never relented for days and days.
Not to cut us off, but I'm going to, because, we could sit here and complain all day long about Eversource and their action. I think they are going to definitely going to hear it from the state and the higher ups in Hartford. That's fine. I think we can tell our story and advocate, but I'd like to not dwell on what happened and how it happened in terms of the failures there. I'd like to focus, or at least in the future focus, on what we can do to make sure that we, the town of Kent solely, are in a position such if this happens again, we can help respond to our local constituents. Given the massive failure, certainly at the utility level, I think there are certainly lessons to be learned here as to how we can get things up and running earlier. And some of the things, Gene, that you pointed out on the bullet points are great. It would have, I think, been certainly more helpful and more positive for everybody had we had those up and running. But we can all learn lessons from here, and I think that's to me, while the ongoing discussion happens up in Hartford, what's relevant, at least for me and probably you, Ed and Gene, and David and Eric and everyone else at the firehouse and other places of services, how we can avoid this, or whatever board of selectmen deals with this in another 10 years or so.
Yep.
So I would say that I don't know what the process is to put our heads together, but maybe we get that information from the town stories, and the town stories with an ending that says yes, and I would have liked to have seen this, and that we can then put in a hopper and figure out if this, whatever that is, becomes something that we can actually do and effectuate in a strategic way.
Yep, and that's what I've been communicating out to people. How could the town have helped you with either their preparedness or teaching better preparedness in light of everything. What were the pinch points and the needs? So, and this is part, the bigger after action is going to be exactly what you're talking about, Chris. That's where this is going to go. So unless anybody has questions, we can move on.
I think
Nope.
you have to vote on it.
Oh, thank you. I'm so not used to.
What do you mean you think? You know we have to vote on it.
Yes, there's a motion on the floor to instruct Randy, town council, to apply for intervener status to the Pura investigation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara. Cell tower, they had the continuation of the siting council hearing on the 9th, no, on the 13th. No, the 11th. It was primary day, because why wouldn't they do it on primary day? And it will continue September 3rd. I did get CC'd on a letter from Todd Powell to the fire department. If you want me to, do you want me to find that so we can look at it? Ed, you saw it because it was discussed last night at the meeting. Basically, Todd Powell is offering to enter into an agreement with the fire department to help them with emergency telecommunications. And he's offered $50,000. There's some triggering events. It's dependent on the siting council denying the application of AT&T. So there's some process. If you want to look at the letter, I can pull it up. If you want me to send it to you, I can send it to you. It's a letter for the department, so the department, KVFD, needs to consider it. Ed, do you want to fill in any gaps here?
No, because we really haven't discussed it a whole lot yet. So that's
It
why
literally just came in yesterday.
that's what I'm saying. So Alan about it a little bit today, but
What else?
I don't want to start talking and then not know exactly. There are, like you said, there's a lot of little different things they've added into it. Without talking to them and knowing more information, I might be saying something that's totally wrong the way it's written.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd
Yeah,
rather.
I would echo what Ed's saying and more. I'd like to hear it from the fire department that they feel that there's a private concern out there that would help them solve communication issues. I think that's great and generous, but I think it's something outside of what we're dealing with, to the degree that right in front of us is the siting council is the one that's going to feel. Yep.
Okay. I'll get that out to Chris. I'll send that out to you. It'll be part of the minutes.
Good.
Transfer station. So there never were any job descriptions for the transfer station employees. And I believe Joyce is on vacation this week, so I'm okay. I was just making sure that these were new drafts. So there's a transfer station attendant and transfer station manager job description draft, and they do need a review, and I don't think that we should move on them tonight. But there are just some ongoing concerns I have at the transfer station, just to make sure that we're in compliance with our state permit, to make sure that we're not doing anything, that doesn't comply with the laws, the regulations, that we're keeping doing good housekeeping at the transfer station. We're light on personnel right now. We haven't had many. I think we've had one bite from the job posting that we put up, and that was it so far. And we need to get a little bit deeper on personnel so that we have some backup, so that if one of the transfer station workers wants to go on vacation or falls ill, or any of those contingencies, that we have a backstop, and we really don't right now. So there's more that, more conversation that needs to happen. If you can review the job descriptions so that we can have a fuller discussion next month, we'll get John Kaminsky to come to the meeting and have a conversation. It's been the agenda. On the agenda, there's the staffing and job descriptions, and then there's the pay rate transfer station for the transfer station. So Joyce just included the clarification from the February 7th, 2019 minutes as far as the chain of command and who the supervisor is, just for clarification. And then the other piece is one of the attendants, and it's in your packets, Chris and Ed, your agenda 5, item 5B.
Yep.
Where there was a hiccup, or I don't really know what to call it, but Ben Brady was hired in March of 2019 by Bruce at a rate of $15 an hour. At the time, that rate was in the packet. It says it was $17, but it was actually $17.48. And Barbara, just keep me on the straight and narrow here so I don't confuse anybody. So at the February 7th, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting, the board agreed that the 2019-20 budget was determined that there are 2 levels of employees at the transfer station, manager and attendant. And those hourly rates were And so I'm correcting what's in the packet, because that packet, what was in the packet was based on what was published in the previous fiscal year. So it was just pulled the wrong hourly rate. So instead of, for the manager at $19.93, it should have been $20.49, and the attendant of $17 should be $17.48. So just, that's a correction / clarification. On July 1st, 2019, Ben Brady's hourly rate was not increased to reflect that $17.48. And then in the 2021 budget, there was that rate increase. I'm sorry, the personnel increase, and bringing up the attendant rate to $17.83. And Ben's hourly rate stayed at that, went up at the $15 rate to $15.30. So he needs to be brought up, and we need to catch him up to the rate that he should have been at all along. I'm not sure why the $15 was decided as an hourly rate instead of what that hourly rate was, $17.48. I don't know. But we just need to be bring him up to the current attendant rate of $17.83. So he's owed $2.48 per hour for the 430.5 hours he worked during fiscal year 1920, and the additional $2.53 for the 45 hours worked to date for fiscal year 2021. So he's a consistent 1 day a week transfer station worker that I'm sure you're all aware of. And so that total would be $1,181.49 to bring him to the current rate that the other transfer station attendants are at. Does that all make sense? Did we lose Ed? Oh no, there you are, sorry.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just don't understand how it happened, but
I don't know. I wasn't here.
yeah, but that should have been done in the budgeting of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was all clear without all the information in front of me, you know. But I'm going to recuse myself anyway, he being my godson.
Ah.
And mows your lawn.
And more importantly, mows my lawn, Ed.
I don't have a problem with it. Can we
the whole thing today?
figure also at some point before next month about how the station's doing as far as income, what we're paying out, and the new attendance fees?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Now that all the passes have been purchased and that kind of a.
Yeah, we can do sort of a where we are now.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good idea.
Well, I can tell you right now that the transfer station income is at 84.7% of what was budgeted. So 95,000 was budgeted. And so far, well, through July 31, I should say, $80,484 has been received.
And is that in line sort of with previous years, Barbara?
It's pretty typical, yes, because most of the transfer station permits are issued this time of year. However, last year, between the permits that were issued and the recycling that they get for when they sell textiles or e-waste or anything else, last year, 94,000 was budgeted, and the total revenue realized for that was 97,415.
Okay.
Has there been any increase because of more people being here full time? Do we know? Doesn't appear to be, Donna. I mean, Barbara.
Well, I can't tell because I don't know I don't have the tonnage information in front of me. I don't usually track that information.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we get that from HRRA, and I can, I'm trying to think, my most recent one is probably from 2 months ago. But I can get that, I can send that out to the board.
I mean, that's something that we have not anticipated.
Right. That's why I was just asking about.
Yeah.
Maybe next month we can see if we're still on track with what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay.
Gene, in this review, having read the material about the municipal waste systems and the alarming tonnage increase, at least that it seemed like over a 5-year period, I think it was, or 4-year period. Are you thinking that what we should do is really do a drill down on the whole concept of the transfer station and how it operates? Is that, with the, what was it, last meeting or the meeting before, we had the individual who was talking about recycling and composting?
Yeah, I think sort of all these things converging in with the increased usage and trying to set up a composting program. We're going to have to make sure that we're doing this the right way, not just adding on another service to the public, but not adding on if we need more personnel. So yeah, I think we should take a deeper dive. And the reports, we get a ton of reports from HRRA. They tell us how many mattresses and how much paint and how much textiles and tonnage. And I think just from the storm, there was a big influx because of all the refrigerators. It was like 12.5 tons last weekend versus, I think it's about 7 tons. Granted, a lot of that was heavier in weight because of, you're talking spoiled food, so that all weighs more than normal municipal solid waste does. But yeah, I think that we need to evaluate and make sure that we're doing this the right way and providing the right services for the town, for sure, and managing it the way that we're supposed to be managing it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mayor, that we can document that during the storm, so if somebody comes back and says, well, why did the town come up so short on money from stickers, we can say because there was an additional so many tons of material brought in because of this storm, and this storm, maybe.
Yep.
If we have to answer it. So
yeah. Yep. So as far as this, Ben Brady, Chris, you're recusing yourself.
I am recusing myself.
Retroactive Ben Brady, the $1,181.49.
And I will
effective today or whatever. And bring his rate up to the 1783 where he was supposed to be currently.
I will second that.
You're back on?
Yeah, I'm just writing the motion. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Chris, you're recusing yourself. Due to mowing. Okay. Next. The invitation to join the Deep Municipal Waste Reduction Initiative. This came last week from Commissioner Dykes. We got a follow-up email from Jen from HRRA, just sort of reminding the group that this came. And it's a no-brainer. We should be part of it. I'll make a motion that we participate in the Deep Municipal Waste Reduction Initiative.
I'll second it.
The only thing I didn't get out of the paperwork is timeline on that. What is there? I think it was said, did they say they were trying to do like by the
Just say 2027, I thought.
2027? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a long.
Yeah.
So
yes, it's a long-term plan, and many other states are doing this. Maine is in the middle of one. Yeah, there's a lot of other states that are taking this on at a state level, just because of everything that's going on with,
right.
worldwide.
But we'll still do our own drill down, and hopefully be flexible enough that if some good plans or different plans or something happens, we can retrofit it after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And HRRA is, I never thought I would learn as much about garbage as I would when taking this position, but the HRRA is really doing a great job at leaning forward, and I'm so very glad that we're part of HRRA and not the one that's up north that with the plant that's going to be $37 billion or something like that. The COG is really, really worried about that. And Barbara Henry and I sort of sit back and go, okay,
Yeah,
good thing we're not in that mess.
Mm-hmm.
And any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
All those in favor to participate in the Deep Municipal Waste Reduction Initiative?
Aye.
Thank you. Barbara, you're on deck.
Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, so this is my typical treasurer's report. The top section talks about how many meetings I've been to through Zoom. The middle section is statistics for the past month and the current month. However, after the last meeting, because it's the end of a fiscal year, I got a whole bunch more additional things to process for June. So we actually spent $192,000 more than I had reported last time for June. And the Board of Ed spent about $50,000 more, and we received about $64,000 worth of money more than I had reported previously. Of the $192,000, the biggest chunk of that is the resident state trooper. The bill finally came in. They bill us once a year for that. And that was $175,533, and that was for the whole year. That did not include any additional overtime for special projects or activities that he may have been called in to work on. The reason the revenue changed so much is there was one department that I was waiting for to provide their back revenue to me. They got a little bit behind. So 47,000 of that 64,000 came from one department. So then we move on to July, and you can see even though I issued less checks, I spent the same amount of money, and that's because the checks are a whole lot larger in July when all the organizations want their full year appropriation. The middle of my report is just some regular activity updates for my office. The only thing I really want to point out is that the workload in the office is currently being handled by my senior clerk who's working remotely. I have a junior clerk now who's doing some clerical stuff just in the office, and myself, but it's not really very efficient. So I am in discussions a little bit with Jean about how we're gonna maybe move forward and change the situation for my office, because I'll never get through the whole year this way. And the very bottom of my report is just the current year actual versus budget. And you can see the revenue, we're already at 4 million of the 13, and that's just July. So that's typical. Usually July and August is high revenue because of the tax collection. Then again, January and February is high revenue. And I will just submit that to be appended to the minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Welcome.
I guess I'm up next. We've received a contract from through the town of New Milford. October 3rd, there's New Milford is hosting Household Hazardous Waste Day. There have been multiple of these that were scheduled and canceled due to COVID. So New Milford is, the whole authority is really eager to get one of these days stood up. They had one in Newtown a month-ish ago. So the contract is based on the number of cars that participate from each town. And I did not hear back. I asked how many cars participated in the last one. I didn't hear back from her yet. I don't know, Barbara, if you have any visibility on on what the cost is for us. I don't think many people from Kent go to the Household Hazardous Waste Days. So the contract is they waive the fee for, there's 2 fees, but they waive whatever the other fee is, sorry, the, where is it? It's a setup fee for the company to do MXI. I'm sorry, the company is named MXI to do the collection. So they waive that, but then the disposal for the waste is based on the total vehicles participating. So the contract has not changed in 10 years. They need and want volunteers to come and work at the Household Hazardous Waste Day. My plan is to go down and spend a bunch of hours down there. It would be great to see other board members to go down and spend a couple of hours. It's in New Milford on Pickett District Road, I think. Yeah. Oh, at the John Pettibone School. So I'm going to make a motion that we sign this contract to participate in the Household Hazardous Waste Day on October 3rd.
I'll second it.
And just a question, I thought household waste days, or maybe it was just a specific, used to be collected up at Housatonic. What was that, Ed? What did they used to do up there?
Yeah, there are a bunch that happen all around the region. They haven't planned any for on the upper end of the larger region.
I'm good.
Okay, I'm just sorry, I got to get this down. Alrighty. All those in favor? Aye.
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 There is, we were notified of the vacancy. Mark Sabetic has resigned from the Board of Finance, and they'll be meeting. They don't have a meeting this month. I'll probably touch base to see if they're going to call a special meeting so that they don't get too far out of sync with heading into the next budget season. To get a chair in place, but they're obviously all aware of that. COVID, we're continuing moving forward. David and I met today, fleshed out some more of the sort of what the town hall plans are for come September 1st. The travel advisory continues to sort of wax and wane. There's just a lot of talk about what's going to happen in the upcoming fall with all the schools getting back into session. A lot of concern there. We had David had a good conversation with Stan, and I think we've come up with a better solution that's going to be more affordable and cause less construction to the doors in the offices. We were looking at doing, I don't know what those are called, like making half doors out of the doors so that when people come into the town hall, we don't want them, that interaction, because most of the offices are small, and in order for people to stay the 6-foot distance. And Stan recommended that we just replace the glass, save the glass. A vendor can pull it out and replace it with a piece of plexiglass that's got a window in it, and we can put a small ledge on the other side so that those interactions can happen at the office level. So right now we're on track to open the town hall by appointment on September 1st, which is in alignment with pretty much every other town hall in the region, and is in alignment with Torrington Area Health Department recommendations and State Department of Health recommendations. David, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, no, we're at this point, now that we've got sort of the plan for the doors, we're gonna work on getting a vendor in place for that. And I really thank Stan on that. We've gone back and forth a few different times, and he was very constructive on that. And really, he had that idea. I mean, it wasn't, I had talked about the half doors, but there's a fair amount of work to do, but it's all manageable. It's mostly kind of, other than the plexiglass piece there, it's mostly about just making sure we've got enough supplies and a scheduling process. But
Can you explain the by appointment only? What does that mean, and how is that going to be effectuated? I mean, do I have to go onto a website and get an appointment, or do I make a phone call? Do I text? Do I ring a doorbell? What the heck goes on?
You would make a phone call, and we're going to write up a set of instructions that goes out in the email blast newsletter. It goes on the website, and every department has it, so that if they need to share it out, it can be shared out every way possible. Put it on Facebook.
And so if there's multiple appointments in the building, how is that going to be? Like one at the town clerk's office and one at social services and one at, the land use office and one at the tax collector? How's all that going to work?
So what we are looking at is that we can have multiple people in the building, but we want to space it out so that in the lobby we don't have multiple people congregating one at a time, so that you can come in, go where you need to go, be in that location and exit. But one of the things that we talked about is if two offices are in close proximity with a person, since they're going to be in the hallway, so say you're going to be at social services and the registrar, that would have one appointment slot essentially. So you could have somebody there, and then you could have somebody at the selectman's office, and then somebody downstairs, but you just don't want them bunching up. So we need to do a little bit of work on sort of pairing that, and then say those combinations can, we're thinking every 30 minutes can have a time slot and do that. But we're hoping that a lot of the people who have been doing a lot of the remote pieces that have been taking place and the drop-offs and whatnot will continue as often as possible, because that will cut it, in a lot of ways. It has worked well, and it does reduce the amount of people that need to be flowing through the building. So the more of those things we can do, the less people just coming in the building just because. But this will give an opportunity for some of those interactions where it would be beneficial, or people really do want to do that, or the department really wants that in certain instances. They'll have time slots to go ahead and do the scheduling.
Thank you.
I've done 5 pistol permit interviews out under the tree, and every single one of them have,
Been a good shot.
Yeah, Darlene and Don are probably, they're on the call. They're probably the 2 biggest users of, they interact with the public probably the most of anybody in the building, and it's working. We're not getting pushback. We're not saying, we want to get in the building. There's none of that. Everybody is, flexing and pivoting to all the modifications and disruptions that sort of is daily life now.
To Barbara's point about her assistant, how are we getting it so that, departments like Barbara's and others are not swamped? Is it an individual basis that people choose that they don't want to come in? Is it department to department? I'm not clear as to what personnel and why they, specifically assistants, are there or not.
I'll just speak right off the bat for my assistant. She has health compromised, so she isn't leaving her home, literally, not at all.
And that's sort of the initial tier of decision making.
So without going department to department, would you say there's a small percentage of people who are in that situation that they can't do that? They can't work. But moreover, most people are okay, and departments are operating at full steam.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then given that scenario with those who, they're that small percentage of people, or assistants in particular, or even people operating in the department, how are we making it safe for them, and how are we getting the work done for us?
I got a little bit lost in your question.
Well,
for the people who are coming into the building?
Yeah, in plain speak, if someone can't show up for work, are we getting our dollars out? And if someone can't show up to work because of this situation, are they getting enough work so that they can, so they can help us? You know what I mean? I mean, at some point, somebody's got to, maybe not, or if you can't show up for work, then the question is, how is real work being done remotely so that the taxpayer knows that we're paying for what we're getting, and not casting any aspersions on anybody and their choices. It's really, it has to come from the town hall to say, this is what we're doing.
Done. Right. And so I'm just going to ask Darlene and Barbara, because they have the sort of day-to-day of how the remote work is going, but it's really one employee. It's one.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's one, because it could be 2, 3, or 4. So the question is really to make sure that there's a process in place that you, Ed, and I feel comfortable that we're getting our dollars worth, 1, and 2, that we're making the person who is compromised to make sure that they're safe and they're not, and they're getting work.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not talking about a problem. I'm talking about making sure that the solution is described properly.
Right. And because Barbara and Darlene have been more involved in the day-to-day figuring out with Yucatec, which is our IT management provider, they've helped Barbara and Darlene, because they've helped both of them with the remote access into the systems and software that they need access to for this person. So yes, is there a process in place? Is there a written policy in place if somebody needs to go out and work remotely? Not yet. We're working on it. It's complex because it involves really, to do it the right way, it involves hardware, and we've made it work because it's only been a single employee, and for other people, we've been staggering schedules and doing it that way. But yeah, we need to complete that loop in figuring out what what remote work policy will look like.
Okay.
But we're not getting our money's worth.
No, it's not so much.
It's not.
It's not so much that, Mike. It's more that make sure that
Yes.
the system we have is actually operating and properly. And if it is not,
I understand.
because of the
Chris.
scenario, we have to figure it out.
Right.
I mean, all the talk about the storm and Eversource, I thought Eversource did a great job considering the storm, what it hit and how badly it hit. And we're still not making sure that this is efficient. And how long has this had to do?
It's not that it's not efficient.
But we're not
got a lot of
sure.
moving parts.
All
It's,
all I know is I went to Costco's last week, and you want to see 200 people in one store with no plastic mask on, no 6 distancing, and I didn't get COVID, so they must be doing something right.
I just don't want to see you for 14 days, Ed.
Go to work. I'm an essential employee.
next on the docket, Chris, you want to go ahead with your Swift House and so forth?
Zan, are you still on? Zan?
Yep, she's on mute. Give her a sec.
All right. Because unfortunately, I was not able to make the meeting today, and there was some recommendations. Zan sent me a text and I was not able to get much more, but it was about expenditures of some of the things. We've identified a bunch of problems there.
It took Zan, you're off mute.
Okay, finally got out of mute. Sorry about
Thank you.
That's okay.
that. Okay. Well, there were two things. One on the agenda is that, in fact, it's not a new charge that we're requesting. It's that when this subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen was set up for Swift House, it wasn't really clear to any of us exactly what our charge was. I had suggested some things in a letter that I sent to the Board of Selectmen, but we didn't know if that's what we were operating on. So we just asked, for the purpose of clarity for our work, what you expect of us and what we think that we're responsible for. So I can read you what we as a committee, a task force, thought we should be doing, and hopefully you'll agree, and if not, we can amend it. Our charge would be to assess and prioritize the current midterm and long-term physical needs of Swift House, to have supervisory responsibility over budgeted funding to undertake critically needed repairs and maintenance, to study options for the future use of Swift House and its surrounding area, and to formulate recommendations for a Swift House action plan to present to the Board of Selectmen. So we wanted to know if that is your idea of what we're supposed to be doing now that we've been doing something for the last couple of months, and if that can be approved by you.
I don't recall what the original charge was.
Well, we couldn't find an original charge in the minutes. Otherwise, we would have known what we were supposed to do. I mean, the task force was set up by the Board of Selectmen, but it never really said specifically what was expected of us. So that's why we asked for clarity, that we're not spinning our wheels.
I could have sworn that we had said, and we need to make sure that they have a charge so they understand.
Does this sound reasonable to you? Are there other things we should be doing? Are we doing things we shouldn't be doing? Chris, do you have this in writing to share with it? Oh,
Yeah, I can do a screen share. Give me
okay.
a second. Hang on. Give me a minute.
So I think that generally speaking, this just codifies or clarifies, if you will, whatever we have approved. The thrust of it obviously was to take care of a building that is a municipal building that has been neglected benignly, and in doing so, we were looking at the immediate needs. The third component would be to look at a long-term strategy for the property itself, and then the second one is about funding and overseeing it. That's one we chatted about probably the most, because Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone else who's part of the actual process, the Board of Selectmen are the only ones who well, let me back up. A subcommittee cannot spend money. It has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So what we're looking for is to just say, yes, you're allowed to do this, and then we're going to go and not going to have to come back and say, oh, we want to fix this soffit, or oh, we want to fix this. We have that lump sum of money to undertake that project. And that project specifically has a whole lot of nitty gritty that we're dealing with right now with, open fascia boards and holes and rot and things like that.
Is Joyce part of your committee?
She is.
Okay.
Well, she's not actually on the committee, but she sits in and she is taking minutes, and she is
she's available to us when we need information and works collaboratively with us, but she's not a voting member of the committee.
Because currently that budgeted department is something that she oversees.
Right.
Yep.
So she's the one who sort of orchestrates what happens over there.
Right.
Well, we have been soliciting information and proposals or estimates from contractors for the work that needs to be done. I've been away for a while, but I was there last week and met with painting and carpentry contractors. I've met with a number of masons. We are the ones who really have had eyes on the building, and met with 3 well-known contractors in town for their input as to what they felt the priorities should be for the work that needs to be done. So we've been organizing and taking responsibility for that. And it was our assumption that we would put together, we would assemble that information and we would say, these are the priorities for the work that we would like to do immediately with the funds that have been appropriated either in the town budget or by the special fund from the Board of Selectmen. And there is in fact work that we'd like to be able to schedule before, we get further toward the fall. And then there are other things that are more costly that are going to have to find funding in the coming year. But there's quite a bit that really needs to be done if we're going to prevent this building from further deterioration. So we've been working hard on trying to get all that information together.
Yeah, so I think my
what I'm not
point is
clear
the
about,
second bullet.
pardon me. The second bullet is to have supervisory responsibility over budgeted funding to undertake critically needed repairs.
And just to parse that out, we kicked these, believe me, the three of us kicked this around because, as you can well imagine, I'm just a little sensitive to giving a subcommittee authority to start spending. Supervisory responsibility means simply that if it is recommended to the Board of Selectmen that we undertake these projects, then we are given the green light to go ahead and take care of the projects as we see fit, when we see fit, and prioritize them, rather than having to come back and say, we need to do a chimney now and we need expenditures of X, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if the things that are deemed most critical, both through the advice of well-known contractors and experienced members on the committee, I mean, Chris certainly has had a lot of experience with physical buildings. I did design and construction management for 15 years and have worked with contractors extensively. And my husband and I were GCs on our own home in Kent as well. So it isn't that we're without experience, and we have really reached out to get the opinions of other people that are well known in the community. So we're trying to prioritize the work that needs to be done within the scope of the funds that have been made available through the Board of Finance and the town budget and through the special fund. We're not going to be able to do everything that needs to be done immediately. And then at that point, we would try to figure out the time horizon and come back to the Board of Selectmen for a discussion about where do we go from here in terms of doing any additional work that can't be covered with the funds that are in the budget now for, I mean, I don't know, there are specific amounts for repairs and maintenance. They overlap to quite a degree. I mean, it depends on whether you consider painting regularly and repairing things.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I missed the meeting today, unfortunately. But I did get the pictures, thank you. And is there a hit list that we can actually talk about now to the selectmen?
Yes.
Of things that really need to be addressed now, so that we don't have to wait until September's meeting and October's meeting.
Yeah, I was hoping that we could do that. The two things that Marge Smith and I talked about today in your absence that we think are most critical. We need to repoint the stone foundation in the rear of the building in particular, where it's loose stone and there's a lot of missing mortar. And there are places that are obvious where rodents have entered the building. And you can see in the interior of the building their pathways. So some of that one place was repaired by American Biotech in their contract, but really the whole foundation needs to be tightened up and made secure, because you can't just patch here and there because they're just going to find another. It's so friable. I mean, the cement is so beyond. Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but
that. We'd like to do that, and that, depending upon which of the two masonry contractors that I've talked to would be available to put us into their schedule, it would either be $2,300 or $2,700 to do that rear stone foundation.
Okay. So do you have written estimates from them?
I do.
Okay. So, and how much funding, how much do we have, Barbara, if you could weigh in with respect to funding on taking care of the Swift House?
Well, currently in the current year budget, there's $5,500 under maintenance, and then there's 750 under repairs. So that totals 6,250. I do not know what Joyce had planned for that money, but I believe that the Board of Finance increased it by $1,000. So I
No,
think
actually, the Board of Finance increased the original budget was for, I think, you know, I looked at the approved budget now, and the approved budget, as you said, is 5,500 for maintenance and 750 for repairs. You know, I think it depends on what you consider maintenance. Joyce didn't have anything planned for maintenance other than the only annual thing that she does is to have them clean and take a look at the furnace and the heating system. We've talked about putting together a maintenance schedule so that this town won't be in this position again in a few years. But she didn't have other things on her agenda. So she's aware of the things we've been talking about because she's been involved in every meeting that we've had. There's the repairs to the foundation. The chimneys are in bad repair. But that is a complicated situation. Everyone who has given us professional advice has said you really need to redo the chimneys from the roof up at the same time that the roof is replaced, which was supposed to have been replaced, I think, about 10 years ago, according to the prior commission that looked at the condition of the building that Nancy O'Day Wyrick chaired at the time. And it's in their meeting notes that, you know, so we're well beyond the life of the roof. And so the question there is, do we put Band-Aids on the chimneys? We could put bluestone on the top of 2 of the 3 chimneys, not the one that's used for the flue for the furnace, which is in much better shape. But the 2 that are in the worst shape, we could put bluestone on the top and cap them because they're not actually used. The fireplaces are not in use in the building. And they could silicone them. The flashing is in such disrepair that one of the 2 masons that I talked to isn't interested in touching it. The other has said, this is not the way I would do it, but if you can't replace the chimneys and do the roof at this point, we can try to, you know, boost them up so that we don't have more. There's evidence of water damage inside the house from one of the chimneys.
So, Zan, I think what would be productive for the Board of Selectmen is an actual list of items that are critical, that have a dollar figure to it.
And why they're critical.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
And why.
Yeah.
And why they're why they're prioritized in such
Right.
that manner.
The things that we're prioritizing now are things where we want to prevent more animal incursions in the building or water damage. Those are the only things, or, you know, continued serious deterioration. So that's what we're focusing on. I've been trying to get some prices from Kevin Brady for quite a while. I know he's very busy. I'm waiting on that, and I met with another painter-carpenter duo over the last weekend, and they're supposed to get prices to me in a couple of days. But what I was wondering tonight is whether you could give us authorization to repair the soffits, which are totally rotting in 2 places where there have been animal incursions and water damage.
when we get a price for that, as long as it fits within the available funds. If it doesn't fit within the available funds, we would come back to you and ask you for, if there are other funds available, or we would ask you if we could take anything else out of the Swift House budget that is not slated for use this year and use it in the category of repairs and maintenance.
So we're actually off, we're sort of out of bounds of what is identified in the agenda. And because it's a special agenda, I'm not super comfortable heading.
Why is this a special agenda?
It's
not a special meeting. It's a regular meeting, is it not?
It's a special meeting.
I was curious about that. I noticed that when I looked at the agenda and tuned in tonight. Is this not a regular meeting?
Regular meeting would have been the 11th.
Oh, right.
Right.
We had to move it and make it a special meeting because of the primary. Thank you, Barbara. I was sitting there going, why did we move it?
I only one comment. I know we're getting off, but I thought originally we were going to have a committee that was going to look into long-term, come back and have somebody survey the whole building and give us some ideas about what needs to be done from the bottom all the way up. I know we talked about the emergency stuff originally.
Yeah.
Yes, we're doing that the entire thing. I mean, we're going to give you recommendations for everything that needs to be done.
Right.
But right now we don't have enough money to address all those things. So we are focusing first on the things that are most urgent to protect the building.
Right. But I don't want this to end up being like the community house where we do one thing and then 10 years later we do something else, and by the time we get back to it, the thing we did needs to be done again. And if we're going to keep coming back, now we need the roof. Now we need the furnace. Now we need the all new electrical. No, we painted. I know the special meeting, but I think we need to see the full scope of the work that needs to be done to bring the building back up to see if it's even worth it, or if the townspeople want to spend the money on it.
I understand that. We all understand that. We've discussed that.
And that's why
the task force.
Right.
But in the meantime, I mean, even if the town decided that they want to sell this building for whatever purpose, at this point, it would never pass an inspection. And there would be things that would be so compromised, and I feel personally that it would be irresponsible not to do the most urgent things before the winter while we are trying to make long-term planning for how to finance the things that will have to wait because we don't have any choice.
How about if I may suggest that we
you need to get back to the
no, because it's with respect to the task force subcommittee charges.
Right.
And sue me if I'm out of bounds. But the bottom line is, I think what we're trying to grapple with, and with respect to the subcommittee, is we're dealing with a building that's crumbling.
Right.
And if the town doesn't want us, then tell us now, and we'll stop and pack our bags.
Right.
However, if indeed you want, to Zan's point, want to actually make this building stand up and actually have some merit in it itself, and the townspeople can decide how they want to deal with it later on, we need to be able to put together something so that the three of us can decide how we're going to present it to the town. That said, I recommend that we, the subcommittee, put together an actual schedule of things that need to be repaired with dollar prices to you,
right,
us, at which point then we can figure out that we decide whether we want to leave it to rot, or we can or we can shore it up. And then at that point, we will also present to you after that, or shortly after that, hopefully, a concept as to what we see and how we see it functioning in the town.
To that end, I've been working with Jean and the other members of the task force. We've put together a survey to get public input into ideas for an interest in various potential uses, historic uses that have been used in the past, and also new ideas for things about how the building would be used, and whether there should be on the second floor, rental space that would help offset the cost of owning and maintaining the building for the town. So, I mean, we're working on all of these things at once, but it's now well into August. And if I don't line up the contractors that I've talked to protect the building from animal incursions and water damage over this winter, using the budget that's already been approved by the town, then I think that would be irresponsible of us. And I'd like to have permission from you to go ahead and say, yes, we're going to fix the foundation. And yes, if the soffit figures come in this week within the budget.
Ann, I'm going to stop you right there. We can't do that tonight. It's outside of the bounds of this agenda. We cannot do it tonight. The only thing that we can do tonight is make a motion to consider the chart as we see it on the screen share.
Can you tell me when and how we could approach you to ask for that permission, how soon we can do that, so I can let the contractors know whether we're serious? And
I think what Chris laid out in the broader plan makes sense. And what the short-term, fast, critical fixes are that need to be done, but it's got to all be, moving along in this sort of parallel way.
Well, this is under one other thing that I mentioned initially when I had my first conversation with you. I find it very curious that Swift House is under Parks and Recreation. And I just don't know or understand who has the authority to spend the money that's already approved in the budget.
I think, Zan, you and I have gone round and round on this.
Yeah.
Here's a simple answer. You have, I have, and the subcommittee has no authority. None, zip, zero.
Right.
The only authority is for the Board of Selectmen. The problem is right now, in my mind, is we are not bringing to the Board of Selectmen a comprehensive, detailed, prioritized schedule in which they can say, okay, we understand what we're getting and we're understanding why we're getting it. And then at that point, then the selectmen can decide whether to give the nitty-gritty discretionary oversight of the expenditures of those funds on those little items. But I think at this point, let's deal with what we have in front of us, which is the proposal for the Swift House Task Force Subcommittee charge. If we need to clean that up, let's do that.
Okay.
And I think that I want to point out that in my mind, supervisory responsibility is such that it's only once the Board of Selectmen have acknowledged and approved expenditures.
So Chris, can you make a motion so we can get into proper?
So moved.
Fantastic. My favorite thing when you do that is you say so moved.
Mm-hmm. I need a second though, people.
Second.
Whoever.
You got it, Ed. So that's my pinch point, the supervisory responsibility. We have, municipal policy on spending that the task force isn't necessarily going to have awareness of. That Joyce has been, doing this for years and years. She knows the processes. She knows, where the boundaries are of contractors and
Jean,
how the process.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the bottom line is in that budget has been a very measly maintenance line.
Sure.
And we all need to address the fact that thing is just, is small, and you two and myself are going to see a bigger number coming down the road.
Of course.
And,
Right.
and,
And that's
let's
not
wait,
my
let's wait to
problem
see
isn't
that.
with the number that's in the budget. I'm like,
It's not going to jive. I'm telling you already.
No.
Filling
But that's
holes
not-
is already 23.
Yeah.
that's not, I have no issue with that. I know that there's,
I know you don't, but Joyce's budgetary design was for Joyce and her typical operations of that building.
right, but, and so you're.
Which is why
maybe
we
I'm not
are where we are.
articulating my point. My point is that, we need to make sure that we follow the proper procedure and the proper finance policies that are put in place as far as spending this money. And it also makes me concerned that if we hand off fiscal responsibility, or not fiscal responsibilities, this supervisory responsibility to a subcommittee, then we're setting precedents, and we're going to start to blur the boundaries and blur the lines and blur the concept of the purpose of, in the broader sense, why we task out subcommittees of citizens to handle the detail work of projects.
Okay, it's not going to be different. So for instance, when the sidewalk committee gets up and running, committee gets up and running, they're going to have specific expenditures that they're going to be allowed to do. They will be in supervisory role, which means that they will oversee and make sure that those bills, what the contracting is, and make sure they come into alignment, and then they'll be backed up by the treasurer. That's what supervisory role does not, responsibilities in my mind, and help me here, everybody, does not mean to say that, oh, okay, we have $6,000, we're going to spend $4,800 on paint and windows first. That's not it. That's why I think that what the obligation of the subcommittee is to provide a schedule so that the Board of Selectmen understand what's being done, and as you said, a prioritization with a rationale as to why that's done, so that the Board of Selectmen and the town behind it understands that they are getting something for what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We now have, according to my accounting,
That sounds like a better.
Yeah. $7,250 for repairs and maintenance that has been appropriated. And what I'm in the process of trying to do for you is to say, this is how we would like to spend that money. Do we have your permission? And this is how much we need for things that we feel is critical, and how can we fund that?
Correct. But in fairness to them, Zan, we need to put that on a spreadsheet, and we need to make sure that that's all documented so that they understand that they, being myself included, understand we're getting a real bona fide bids and go from there.
Okay. At what point can we make that happen? Because I'm very concerned about seasonality and availability of contractors.
Well, I think it's our obligation.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about getting this charge discussed and moved.
Okay. Call the question.
Are we all ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Can we take that charge off the screen?
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you.
There we go. That's better.
Okay. Night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, Zan. Okay. Christopher, KVFD Finance Review Committee.
I don't know what that is. Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't met in years. As I mentioned last time, I suggest that we kill it. If you don't want to kill it, I get it. Carly says she still wants to keep it open for some reason. I think we can reconvene. And also considering the fact that we've just lost our chairman, who was an integral part of, from the Board of Finance, who was an integral part of that committee, I saith we killeth it. I make a motion that we, the Board of Selectmen, what's the word I'm looking for?
Disband.
Thank you, disband the, what's it called? The Kent Volunteer Fire Department?
KVFD Finance Review Committee.
Right.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed.
Keep the meeting moving.
So my just thinking out loud is the, they came to us a couple of months ago talking about EMS staffing. I know that that's still on the docket. And Ed, we have at the fire department level, there's always conversations about their, the investment accounts and where that tipping point is of reinvesting back in the fire department from those investment accounts. There's just a lot going on financially with the department, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because they haven't met.
We can always start again at any time.
Anytime.
Or it can come back as something else, or
Yeah, and let me just recap what it was. It was a request from the fire department to help understand how they could best propose to the selectmen and the town their needs, and when and how to organize that. And we helped them organize it. They helped us understand, and between the two, we I think got to a good place. But I think there are future issues that we weren't even dealing with that if are at a critical point, we need to be asked to join and help them.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Main Street noise traffic.
I have met with Andrew at one time only, and he and I are strategizing to see what alternatives we can find, to sort of deal with a lot of different traffic sort of noise issues. Andrew said to me that he would put together a sort of a concept as to what he would need as assistance for that in many different forms. And I'm waiting to get that from him, and he and I have not been able to meet. Clearly, it's been a different summer where the challenge is actually shifting from less downtown issues and more, recreational areas issues. And the simple and easy answer, and just the quickest thing we talked about, is without Andrew having to run up and down to places, there are solutions the Board of Selectmen can take to lock off, to make sure people aren't getting to places where Andrew actually has to police.
So to that end, that was one of the things I forgot about in my report. Rick is getting pricing from a vendor for a gate at on North Kent Road 1 and North Kent Road 2. So the North Kent Road 1 is on the far side of the river. That would be just below the Potters. And the one on North Kent Road 2 is right after the Land Trust little parking spot and the kiosk. That one does pose some what I think are going to be traffic challenges, because I think people are still going to be able to park there, but we actually can't put them up at the top because that's a right away from the DOT. Is that the right way to say that, Rick? The little sort of wing part that comes off two sides.
I didn't want to block off the substation.
Right.
So can right below this substation happen, Rick?
But then it blocks the Kent Land Trust
We'll give him a key.
access.
You give him a key.
Well,
It's not for Kent
the
Land Trust, it's for
concern
the public to access Kent Land Trust.
And they walk around.
Yep.
I mean, seriously, we're dealing with a situation. Look, if
Yeah.
you go back in time, you'll see that I was not an advocate for locking them off.
Mhm.
And when Bruce brought that up,
I was not an advocate of it because at the time there wasn't COVID. There was just a bunch of people going down there that we refused to manage. But at this point, this is one where we are not supposed to be managing them because people are not supposed to be there. So Kent Land Trust, wonderful, they can get a key. And if they need to get down there and the public needs to get there, it's not clear to me. Does Kent Land Trust have to provide access to that property? Because quite honestly,
they want to.
Well, if they do, Kent Land Trust has frontage on Route 7. Why can't they walk down through the woods?
You'd have to ask them why they chose to not to have the access from up there.
Well, then I think the discussion from the municipality has to be with a group that works with us within our town to understand how they're going to help alleviate issues. Why should we create an issue where we have junk and crap and stuff all the way down the bottom and we have to send this resident trooper down there to clear out everybody when, you know, we can solve the problem by simply putting a gate, albeit temporarily, hopefully during this COVID time, and they can create a nice little parking area right off Route 7, right up top where they have, and it's called the Avian Estate, and I know it very well because I was part of the process up there, and they can just walk right down all the way down to the river if people choose to. But I think that dialogue has to happen with and if you want, I can talk to whomever down there. But I think we need cooperation. But I don't mean to get way off topic. What I'm simply saying is if we're going to help our resident trooper in the process, this is going to be one of the solutions, and we have to work around those solutions.
I measured both spots, so wherever we decide to put it, we'll have numbers.
Yep. Thank you, Rick. And when will that be done?
I sent an email on Friday. I didn't hear back from him before tonight, but I'll call tomorrow.
And
see if he worked up any prices yet.
And can I ask you, it's not just it's just not a barn gate? It's not something we can put up?
It's going to be like all the other green ones that are around on the state properties and stuff.
Like on River Road and at the Kent Falls State Park entrance. It's like a...
But on the one on River Road, didn't we put that up?
The Appalachian Trail Committee put it up. We just dug the hole with the backhoe for them.
It's not a heavy lift. It's just we have to get a price from the vendor and...
I mean, why? I'm sorry, maybe I'm just being naive. That's not something you just buy off the shelf, have it shipped, and you can't put it in?
If I have the similar, you know, like a field gate.
Yeah.
But they just rip those apart all the time. So.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
just
with
a all-wheel drive truck backs up them, throws a chain around it, and away they go. So.
Well, that's okay. Whatever. I just, as I said, I don't know. So.
Yeah.
Okay. In any event, getting back to this specific point, that is one of the hot spots. Mm-hmm. And he, being Andrew, has said that we've done a good job down at Bulls Bridge, it seems, with bigger boulders and a lot more parking signs and really deterring that kind of congregation, although it's an ongoing battle. And of course, he said that the good news is once they pull into up on Kent Falls, once they pull in there, it's not his problem. It's only when they're parking on Route 7 that's really his problem. But clearly, as everyone has seen, that once he goes down, talks to people, and they leave, and he leaves, 5 more people show up. So
right. And it's all weekend, all, you know,
yeah.
It's back into Thursday and Friday. And
so there's that,
there's
that issue that
because National Park Service came in with the big team and, you know, blew through there with their 150 signs and snow fencing and extra folks. So.
Yep.
What were you going to say, Chris?
No, I was just going to say that Andrew, that's one of the components. The other component we discussed and talked about was really downtown. So hopefully, given the fact that typically people walk around town a lot in the summer, but certainly in the fall, we're anticipating trying to put together some sort of ideas for us to consider to deal with downtown as well.
and that you were there were business owners in town that were gonna be part of this, and have they?
No, they have not. So the rough draft has not even been polished, if you will. And after that is, and Andrew really has some ideas that are concrete, we can then bounce it off of public. We can bounce it off the commercial, the Chamber of Commerce. We can bounce it off people who are going to all have different perspectives. But I think ultimately it comes down to presence of a police force or position of authority.
You did also talk about, the sort of respect of the motorcyclists, and are you working on that as well?
Yeah, I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I talked to a bunch of guys, and they say there's a small percentage of people who are less respectful, and to their point, which I understand pretty well. It's not just a person who rides a motorcycle. There are people who have no respect on lots of different things. But that to me is a larger issue, and for Andrew as well. I think what we're trying to tackle first of all are the hot spots, and the second thing, the real flow and safety of downtown, and then beyond that, the third component would be really asking for respect from people, and they all sort of tie together. But so hopefully by September we'll have a little bit more for you guys.
Okay. Ed and Mike, Streetscape.
How come you're always at the end, Mike?
Because you guys love seeing my ugly face all this time, I guess. That's all I can imagine. Ed, you want me to go ahead with my letter? Ed's like frozen there.
Yeah, he is frozen. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
First of all, I want to apologize. I didn't get this letter to you sooner. I did email
I'll
it
let
to
Mike
you.
speak.
Thanks, Ed. I did email to you, but the meeting had already begun. I don't know if you've even seen that you got that.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
But here we go. On March 16th, 2020, your board voted to form our Streetscape Committee. That was just about 4 months after the contract was signed with Malone and McBroom. We did not get a formal acknowledgement of the SSBC, which is what I'm calling the Streetscape Committee, until I sent an email to the first selectman asking for it and our charge on April 6th. Shortly after our first meeting, now 4.5 months after the contract was signed, on April 13th, we discovered, that was our meeting, but we discovered shortly after that little or nothing was done as far as moving this project forward. One of the two grants acceptance forms was not signed by the first selectman, and I would have assumed it would have been signed by the selectman who signed the contract. It was not. No plans were even close to the 50% draft required, even to have a preliminary walkthrough with the DOT. There are several other issues that have held this project up. We believe many or all of them could have been dealt with during this 4.5-month lull. With all of this being said, it is now our belief, as well as Mike Doherty of Malone and McBroom, that when permitting is done, we will not be able to effectively break ground this year. The $500,000 Main Street Improvement Grant expires on December 31st, 2020. Any money toward the section from the monument to the tracks must be invoiced and paid by mid-November. I believe that's the date we were given by Barbara Hurst. Mm-hmm. Because she has to have it paid so she could send it in for reimbursement. Therefore, our committee has voted to recommend the following to the Board of Selectmen. Number one, Mike Doherty has provided a list of possible expenditures prior to the above deadline. We recommend the town moves forward to complete the necessary documents and reviews, sends out RFPs, and purchase any possible materials and services There also may be others not on the list. This is in hopes of utilizing some or all of the grant. The second recommendation is we recommend that we suggest that the Board of Selectmen look into, designate, and prepare a space for storage of materials and staging of equipment for the sidewalk project. This may save the town money in the long run, as any contractor will likely have to rent the space to do just such a thing. And so far, that's all we can recommend.
Okay. So let's deal with number 2 first, if we may. Is there a place that we can help, that we can provide? Is the sidewalk committee identified any space?
Well, the idea of either the cul-de-sac or to the left of the cul-de-sac down by the tennis courts could be, to the left could be cleared so it doesn't interfere with the cul-de-sac. But I'm not sure where the line is between the park and rec and the town transfer station or the town garage separates, because I guess that's park and rec deed there. And
well, it doesn't matter. It's all town property.
That's what I thought too, but Rick was saying it would be tough because it's their deed.
It's their what? It's
deeded to the park and rec or something like that.
Okay, well, so that's a recommendation.
That's that's what I think.
Yep.
It's a place that gets used the least.
Yep.
It's
how much square footage do you need down there?
That I have not figured out because we haven't got a complete list of what materials can be purchased.
And would that have to be secured somehow down there?
Well, you're talking granite curbing that can walk away quickly.
Yeah, it can. That's why I'm suggesting. Is that something where you're gating it?
That's also a concern of our committee, is protecting it and being responsible for it until it's ready to be used.
Is there anything, Rick, anything down at the town garage? Any area, any space that can be done or used? Or is it all full?
Depending on how much we're able to buy. I doubt we're going to be able to buy the whole project. We're probably going to be confined to what said in the grant. So that's not going to be, I don't think that's going to be that big of a pile of it. So
let me ask you a different question, I guess, or a different way. If we could get half the materials, do you think you could find place for it on our town garage property?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to see piles out front again, but.
Well, if that's what we have to do.
Yep.
In thinking of that area, I was thinking that after this project, it could be utilized for the piles that seem to be forever in front of the shop there.
Okay. Well, so I think, help me guys, but because you guys are the pros at this, it sounds like there should be enough room down in our town garage to be able to figure this out.
I don't see it anywhere.
Rick?
Well, between the garage and I have gotten permission from Park and Rec to use the cul-de-sac area or the gravel parking lot by the tennis courts before, as long as they still have access to the paths and the tennis courts.
Well, yeah.
I mean, if we purchase materials this fall and they get used in the spring, we're not going to be disturbing that area that much.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on whether if the contractor has to use that for a staging area, then that would, but that would definitely need commission approval for that.
Okay. So then the second question of that is, the comment is such that it says this may save the town money. How much money is it you think saving us? Where are they renting a space in town?
If they want it right in the center, there's
not
too many places. But
right where the Susie Williams property, maybe where the hot dog stand is, might be an option.
Or the fire department gravel lot, maybe, might be an option if the department voted on it.
Well, that would make a lot of sense to me if they're getting some rent there from.
Well, the only worst part is it depends on, you know, if you can't really put materials there because that's even more of a eyesore spot. But they could probably stage their equipment while they were doing the sidewalks.
My only analysis is simply how much am I saving by making room on my land?
Well, I think what the whole thing the committee was looking at was to use this $500,000 grant so we don't lose it.
Right.
For storing materials and stuff.
Yeah, no, I get that, but specifically, item number 2 is about rent money.
We did not take the time to pursue what anyone would want to rent any property concerning this.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell you that.
Okay, but your recommendation from your board, Mike, is such that we find space on our own municipal property so that we save money.
I just said it will likely they will likely have to rent space and forward that cost to the town.
Well, if we buy stuff, we're definitely going to have to store it.
Pardon me? What's that, Chris?
I said, if we buy stuff, we're definitely going to have to store it.
Exactly. So
this has nothing to, so there are 2 components, right? If we buy stuff, we have to store it.
Yes.
And then the second part of that is if we allow, let's just say we have all the stuff stored over on, I'm going to call it Rick's side.
Yep.
But then all of a sudden they come in to start doing work and they want to have a staging area that's a separate component, and they could rent from the fire department.
Well, they could. The idea was to not have them pay rent if we have property that they could use, that we're using to store it already. If it's town property, then if they don't have to pay rent, they don't have to forward that cost to the town. I don't know what the cost would be because I haven't looked into that.
Right, and I get that, and I appreciate you don't, I mean, that's just nitty-gritty stuff. But what I'm simply saying is we could store the stuff over at Rick's, and then we could have them stage at the end of the cul-de-sac on the Park and Rec property. So there are 2 different components to that.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
So the first question is, Rick, do you think there's enough, if we actually are allowed to expend money for material, can you find room for it and for placement of it on your site? And of course, it's dependent on how much.
Yeah, depending on how much. I mean, I don't think it's going to disappear over at the Common Park. But
well, I agree with you, but it's something to consider.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, in that we have no idea how much materials.
Well, the idea is to have a place. This is just not putting apart. This is a suggestion from our committee.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose to spend the money to buy the materials, you need a place to put it.
Yep.
Okay, and in doing that, we would hope that you would think ahead of time so the contractor could utilize that place as well.
Yes,
that's all we're suggesting. We're not.
Right. My only comment, though, Mike, was asking Rick, is there space? But I think it's unfair to Rick to ask him that if he doesn't know what it's going to look like. The idea is, okay, if I'm not saying anything about, I think both of these recommendations are great recommendations, and it's just, we need to get it out.
Well, I would say let's figure it out. Let's hope that we can put material on the town garage side, and let's see if we can't work with Park and Rec or whomever to find a staging area or even more storage if Rick can't handle it all.
Why don't you look at Emery Park? You're not using that, and you've got that big
too far.
Open
That's a long ways away.
Okay, but I need to caution you, if you're going to put anything down by the tennis courts, you've got wetlands that you're going to have to deal with. It won't be a zoning issue because you're exempt from zoning, but you're not exempt from wetlands. And there's a stream that runs right there.
Wetlands can be protected by silt fence or hay bales or whatever. The granite curbing would have no effect on wetlands. The only thing that might have effect on wetlands would be the processed material that would go underneath whatever material is used for the sidewalks, and that could be protected easily with hay bales and with silt fence as well.
Right, I understand that, but you're still going to need to get an inland wetlands permit is what I'm trying to, so that's another step that you're going to have to go through if you're thinking about setting up that area by the tennis courts as a staging area. And that's why I was recommending Emery Park, because then you wouldn't have to go through that process and the park is closed. So it's just a suggestion and just, and you know, a little bit of information regarding the wetlands.
Yeah, it's a good idea, Donna.
Thank you, Donna. I didn't even think of that.
Okay, so we feel comfortable on number 2, that we can actually handle that?
Well, if you want to go through the wetlands committee.
Well,
sure.
we might have to, Mike, we might have to end up storing things all over town if that happens.
No, I
It's
get
not
it.
ideal.
Again, I agree with you. I mean, these were just suggestions, and this is our recommendation, and it's up to you guys to figure it out, and we're willing to help do whatever we can to help you figure that out. So.
Well, I think I don't know if we have to codify it, but I think that given the resources of land that we have around, we can make room for storage. Again, the question is how much are we storing, but.
Yeah, well, look at Main Street from the monument to the tracks and figure all the curbing that's on each side of the street just for the granite curbing.
Yeah.
And you know what, you're looking at how many feet from the tracks? What is it, about 500, 600 feet from the monument to the tracks?
Rick, you measured it. What is it, 1,400 feet for both sides?
So,
something like that?
Yeah.
So you're looking at 1,400 feet of curbing. That's 18 inches tall, 6 inches wide. Stacked, however high they can stack it, whatever.
Yep.
So I can't tell you how much of an area it's going to take up, but I'm sure we can look into it before,
okay,
you know, by the time we have our next meeting.
So I'll make a motion that we accept and move forward the 2 recommendations made by the committee.
I'll second that. So with respect to item number 1, I'm just not clear as to what that, can you just break that down in a layman term, what he's asking for, or what we're doing? Complete necessary documents and reviews?
Do you want me to do this, or do you want?
Yeah, whomever.
Okay, so we're recommending that you use this grant, which is the Main Street. The Main Street grant to purchase. This is just a list that Mike Doherty has provided. It might not be complete, and it might not be able to do everything on the list. Granite curbing, which would be an easy expenditure, but instead of the erosion controls, I'm not sure you want to do the erosion controls this fall, because during the winter, the snow plowing and everything might destroy it. Fencing for, root barrier products, and tree removals could be done. Detectable warning strips, I'm not sure what he meant by that. You can purchase the gravel for the driveways, and there's 8 inches or 10 inches of process or whatever his material he wants to use underneath the sidewalks. So there's whatever that process is. That's the base stone that he mentions. He says it's currently included in such items as a sidewalk, and to break out the paving items more if this was pursued. So these are just what's on his list. I'm not sure what else would come up. I was hoping to talk to him before this meeting, but he's away until Thursday. And we have a tentative meeting for Thursday night, but I would like to have time to talk with Mike and give him time to come up with some other answers for us before our meeting. So I want to push our meeting till next Tuesday. I want to give him time to react to some questions I have for him.
So I have a question about item number 1 and item number 2. If indeed we are moving in this direction, does that mean because of the $500,000 grant there, that you guys are recommending that we go for Main Street first, from the monument to the tracks?
No, we're just recommending that's the only material you can purchase with that money.
Right.
We aren't
So-
recommending anything go first at this point because, we don't have, we're not sure of timing. I guess we haven't even talked about recommending to do anything first because it's not going to happen this year. So I don't see anything happening until next spring, and neither does the committee, and neither does Mr. Doherty. So it sounds like
we're
ahead.
talking about that span, Chris, specifically because that's what was applied for in the grant.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's
I understand it. My question is it conceivable that this material could sit for 3 or 4 years?
No.
Okay, so we're storing it with the anticipation of doing potentially other roads first and then that last?
I would think, but when our committee will likely recommend doing the Main Street first because it's in the spring, and I think it's probably the best time to do it. But again, that's just my opinion. Our committee has not come up with that recommendation yet. But given the fact that you will be if you purchase the materials now, that would be the likely recommendation from the committee to start with that next spring.
Okay. And so my last question is, if we are committing to this is sort of taking advantage of the grant without really understanding what the total nut of this project is going to be. Is
Correct.
that accurate?
Yep.
Correct.
So the taxpayer right now is taking advantage of $500,000, but doesn't even know if they're going to spend $2 million or $6 million.
Well, if we're not going to spend 6, it's not in the budget. But I understand what you mean.
We have to spend whatever,
No,
Barbara,
but
what was that total?
But yes, Chris, it is. That's an extremely good thought, and it does commit the town to doing this project, but it doesn't commit you to the cost because it doesn't commit you to which material you use for the sidewalks, because that will affect the cost in a great deal.
Yeah, I guess my point is that concern.
So what it does is it commits you to doing the project.
Well, I think we're committed to doing the project.
We do have preliminary numbers, or Mike Doherty's list of suggested numbers from his experiences. He did send an updated version of that, which our committee has not had time to review to make any recommendations on that.
Okay.
Yep.
So we will meet next Tuesday, and I will.
We're meeting Thursday evening.
No, I just said before that Mike Doherty doesn't get home until Thursday, and I want to give him more than just an afternoon to give me some answers on some questions before our meeting, and I would like to push it till Tuesday, so he has time to react to some questions we have.
Okay.
And I just found out tonight, because I sent him a copy of this letter, and his email kicked back that he won't be home till Thursday the 20th.
Well, just getting back to the concept, I think I'm committed to the sidewalks, and I think we all are, but I'm speaking for myself individually. And I think that it makes sense to take advantage of the $500,000, stockpile this. I think we need to figure out a way where we can stockpile it internally, save us some money there, and then hope that as the recommendations come down, that we can stay within the budget, so that we're not going to get caught short in the end with, we need more money to finish X, Y, or Z.
So I believe that in our next meeting, we will be able to put some better budget numbers together to present to you and make our recommendations accordingly.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
So I just want to make a quick comment on the letter. There's sort of some of the tone in the letter is negative, and
what is with the tone? I'm just being specific.
Can I just finish, Mike? Can I just finish? Because I asked to make a comment. Thank you.
Yes.
there's an implication that by leaving out one word, it's implied that I didn't sign something. I didn't even know it existed. I had no idea, no visibility. There's multiple people who've been on multiple committees on this project that go back 10, 12, whatever years. I'm sorry that, prior elected officials didn't sign the proper forms that they were supposed to sign. As soon as I found out about it, I signed it that same day and we scanned it and sent it up there.
Thank you, Mike. Yep.
Everybody's doing the best that they can, and the best way for this committee to continue to, remain with the respect that it has is to move forward in a productive, positive manner. And
well, that's what we're trying to do. Okay?
That I didn't sign something.
No. Listen. When I read the letter, I noticed that when I read the letter, if you will listen to what I said,
Mike,
I read the letter and I said,
finish my comment. I'm not looking for finger pointing or anything. I'm looking for everybody to just move forward in a positive way. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking.
We are moving forward in a positive way, first of all. And second of all, when I read the letter, I noticed that, and I said that I would assume that the first selectman who signed the contract would have signed the letter. I added those in. It's not in the letter, but I added that in when I spoke.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you may have heard that because I was not pointing any fingers at anyone. And I said that we assumed that the first selectman who signed the contract would have signed that letter. Okay. Now, there's not a tone here. All I did was state facts. Okay?
Mike,
you state facts and you make a recommendation. Yes,
Mike,
yes,
are you suggesting then, or saying that in the last administration that should have been signed as well?
I would have thought that would have been signed. Yes.
So clearly, Gene, it was not about you. It was the last administration that Mike was talking about. To Gene's point, however,
in the letter that was submitted for public record foiable.
Well, I will write an addendum to it.
So I would say, Mike, and Gene and Ed and all of us is when we get, and I just want to point out in terms of these recommendations, the recommendations are not, they're sort of sentences and paragraphs that don't really say, I need this. It just sort of says, there's more stuff to it. I think in the future from your committee, if we can have something that says, this action we want to have taken for this action we want to have taken for that, rather than recommendations, they should be action items for us to be able to act on, and they should be very pithy and very short and very specific. And while I appreciate what you put together here, I think in the future we really need, almost like we were talking about on the Swift House, we need basically a schedule that says, this is what I want for this is what I want for that. And that would be, I think, a lot more helpful.
You got it.
Excellent. Thank you.
We're ready to move, accept, and move forward.
May I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
Now, I generally am to the point. And to read a tone into it, I've heard this from Mike Doherty. To read a tone into it, I'm not sure why. Because I just get to the point, I state facts, and I move on. And sometimes I guess it's taking a tone. I'm just trying to keep it short and get through this because you obviously have to sit through long meetings, and I just sat through your long meeting along with you just so I could read one page. So please have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
So we're looking to accept and move forward with the two recommendations of the Streetscape Committee in their letter dated August 18th, 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we are adjourning at, which clock is right? 8:51. Thanks everybody for
Thank you guys.
Persevering with my minute taking, and thanks Barbara for the help. Everybody have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.